Congress stepping in only after enormous public outrage. Is there a political cost to sequester, and who should pay? RNC Chair Reince Priebus joins us. Nice to see you, Mr. Chairman.
Hey, Greta, how are you?
I'm very well. I know since you're chair of the Republican Party, you're no doubt going to blame the Democratic Party and the president for sequestration. But so let me ask you the first question. Do the Republicans share any of the responsibility or blame for what's going on with sequestration?
Well, let me back up a little bit, because I thought you and Mr. Trump were into an interesting conversation about what does the president have to gain. I mean, let's just back up for 1 second. You remember a super committee was put together a long time ago to figure out how we could reduce spending in this country. They failed, and as a result of that failure, we had this thing called a sequestration, which was these spending cuts. And there were two theories of the case. One theory was that the president wanted and the Democrats wanted was that they wanted a line-by-line, across-the-board, regardless of the cut, to happen on a percentage basis on every line item in Washington. And the theory was that it would be so painful and so erratic that the Republicans would have to come back and accept the tax increases that the president wanted. That was their theory. The Republican theory of the case was that...
Let me just stop you one second. That is such a lousy game to play with the American people. No. I mean, it's like, can I tell you that whole gamesmanship back and forth on that is the whole idea is because they don't do their job, the job's not being done, so let's punish the American people so the American people either get hurt or rise up and scream.
100% agree. And now the other theory of the case was, fine, we're going to have these spending cuts, but let's give the president the flexibility to decide what programs should be cut with the department heads and what shouldn't. So if you don't want to cut Head Start, you don't cut Head Start. If you don't want the FAA to lay off air traffic controllers, well, then you don't want to do that, but maybe there's consultants to cut and there's retreats that need to be cut. There were two theories. So now the consequences of what happened today is that in the future, next week, the week after, whenever one of these things pop up, and you and Mr. Trump talk about it in regard to the military or what might be coming next in Head Start, now we have a plan. And the plan is going to be that the flexibility is going to be given to the department, and they're going to be able to decide what to spend money on and what not to.
That's a great idea.
The Democrats clearly lost on this thing.
That's a good idea. I mean, so there's a flexibility, but it's going to have to be done bill by bill by bill by bill, department by department, right?
Well, it didn't have to be that way, and I don't think it necessarily has to either. But that's what's probably going to happen. But I think the Democrats are going to come back. Let me just stop you for a second.
Let me say, if that's the way it's done, well, they do all their little busy work and do all their little playing around. They're going to say they're too busy to do tax reform, too busy to do immigration reform because they're doing these other things. As to the extent they play the games and do these sort of seriatim, they do these, every single department as the crisis arises, they can't do their other work. And in fact, they got into this mess because they didn't do their work in the first place.
Well, to be clear, though, the president, and I'm not saying it might not happen in the future. I think the Democrats might want this authority back, but the president was at one point given the option of being able to do what we're talking about right now across the board without having to do this piecemeal deal. He didn't want to take it, and he didn't want to take it because they wanted to have the tax increases across the board and not actually go through with the spending cuts. The problem is when you put people on planes for 3 or 4 hours and you're waiting at a terminal, you're sitting on a tarmac. I mean, obviously people just get livid about that. And even the Democrats in the House at the end of the day said, you know what, we're not sticking with the president on this thing. We're going to fix this problem. We're going to move on. Now, the issue now, though, Greta, as we've talked about, is that down the road, next week and the week after, I mean, they've totally lost their position and what they thought was going to be their leverage on this is total loss. I mean, even Ezra Klein wrote a column this afternoon in the Washington Post. I mean, it was just 100% loser for the president and the Democrats.
I don't understand, though, is that why they have to inflict the pain on the American people for what they fundamentally didn't do in the first place and still won't do. And they require us to raise hell. And frankly, there's a little bit of part of me that thinks that the reason the members of Congress move so fast on this FAA is because they don't want to sit on the tarmac themselves either, because they all leave town, Democrats and Republicans, every Friday night only to return back here on Monday.
But just
right?
remember, I mean, I repeat it again. The president had the ability to do all of this on his own. He didn't. It wasn't
he's
the
the leader.
Republicans coming now. We gave it to him.
And he is the leader, and that I mean that is part of the job about being the leader of the country. Mr. Chairman, thank you, sir.
Thanks, Greta.